Hey, it's Matt from Black Coal Woodworking. Welcome back. Today I'm making something out of this. It's a piece of pine. I'd almost call it a slab that we got out of a tree. Ha, it all comes out of a tree. What was I thinking? Anyway, this is a for fun project. To start things off, I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, and I'm gonna get this thing round. Gouge is freshly sharpened, as you can tell. Got a smooth edge, and it's cutting a lot of great shavings. I'm using the point of the tool and just to the left of that point to do the cutting. I'm landing my bevel up with the angle of the wood. As you can see here, kind of get into the wood and rotate my tool open. So I get that cut coming right off that just left wing of the nose there. Here we go again. I start with the tool being a little closed and then open it up till I start seeing that shaving I want. And then I just go for it. Hey, consider subscribing if you think I've earned it. Now that we're round, it's time to face the bottom. The weapon of choice here is once again the 1/2 inch spindle gouge. I started by using the left wing of the tool to do some scraping to level out the bottom, and then decided to turn it around, put the bevel on the wood, and push cut like you see here. It makes a smooth cut, and it actually worked a lot faster for me. Next up, I gotta figure out how to grab this thing when I want to turn it around. So I'm marking out a line with my caliper to use my 4-jaw chuck. It's gonna be roughly 5 inches in diameter. I just cleared myself some room, and again using the 1/2 inch spindle gouge, I'm cutting down until I meet my line. If you're liking the video so far, give me a thumbs up. And there we go. Now to flip the tool around and create that tenon that I need. It's not very deep. It's about 5 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch. At this point in the project, I was using the design in my head to think that I might actually create and use this as the foot, but that plan changed later. Switching over to the 1-inch flat scraper, I'm using it to obviously flatten the bottom of this thing. I find that it works pretty good to do that. You just got to make sure you don't try and take a whole bunch of wood at one time, or you could be eating that thing too. After flattening the bottom and creating a bit of a foot on the outside, because my plan had already changed, I decided to shape the outside using the scraper as well, just to give it that final touch. Now that I'm done cutting the outside, I did sand it, I just didn't show you that. I'm using shellac to do my finishing. It's kind of like a French polish. The more layers you put on, the shinier it'll get, and you can actually create kind of a film finish. Once I rub the shellac on, I actually do turn the lathe on to burnish it in there, and that is where the French polish concept comes from. I really should use a cloth, stuff it with cotton for that, but I just went with a paper towel. To start on the inside, I'm using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. I first addressed the rim because it wasn't flat there, and then worked my way toward the middle. Doing it like you see here is the worst idea I've had in a while. It took forever, and then I flipped the tool around, tried it this way, and it was so much faster. Now that it's flat, the hollowing can begin. If it wasn't flat, then the tool would start skipping on the wood before it would go deep, and that gets really difficult to do. And if you've ever done any live edge bowls or natural edge bowls, you'll know what I'm talking about. That takes a bit of skill as you're cutting air and then wood. Now in this case, because it's flat, it's much easier, except for whatever reason, it seems like my tool went dull every 3 seconds. And cutting this stuff, I know it's pine, but it was hard, like really hard. I went back to the grinder 3 or 4 times during this process, and between I just pushed like crazy and hoped like crazy that I didn't push this thing off the spinning lathe. Now with a 5-inch jaw, it actually has a pretty good grip, much stronger than if I use the regular 2 or 2.5 inch. So that's probably the one thing that kept this whole thing on the lathe. Yeah, here's me getting creative, turning my tool around the other way to use the other half of the blade so I didn't have to go to the sharpener so often. I did turn the camera around so you can see the view that I'm getting. Again, I'm always trying to line my bevel up because I know that gives me the cleanest cut and the easiest cut. Alright, time to flatten the bottom. To finish off the rim, I'm using that 1-inch flat scraper again. Then moving my way from the center of the platter toward the outside, you can see that I'm nibbling off little bite-sized pieces of this wood, making that line disappear, and when that line goes away, I know it's flat, and the rest can be sanded. To clean up the inside of the rim, I flipped over to the 1/2-inch spindle gouge again, because I can get an extremely clean cut that way. I also addressed the top of the rim because it just wasn't as clean as I wanted. This just means I have to sand less, which obviously is a big deal for me. Not surprising, the finish of choice on the inside is the same as the outside, shellac. It's about a 2-pound cut because that seems to sink into the wood a bit more, and it seems to strengthen the fibers as well, and it gives it a nice shine. I'm using heat here. If you can look really closely, you might see the line kind of grow as the finish cures. I flipped the platter around again because it is time to take the foot off. It no longer fit my plan, so I'm using the 1/2-inch spindle gouge to do that. This scraping cut does not leave a nice finish. So once I had finished kind of taking the bulk of the wood away, I flipped the tool around and used a push cut to make that nice clean face again. And using a point tool, I guess it's a scraper, I created a couple of decorative lines. Because why not? I thought I would finish this part on the lathe because it's a little bit easier and I get to polish it in there and create some shine. To get rid of the nub, I'm using just a regular chisel and a hammer. Comes off pretty nicely, and then within a few seconds of sanding that down, yeah, I showed you some sanding, but I got rid of the nub and it was very clean. A little more shellac and it's all done. Thanks for watching. See you next time.